Human history is crammed full of incidents from civilizations rising and falling as wars are fought and lost, to revolutions sweeping away the past to begin again. There has also been great architecture and many important innovations, from the first stone tools that enable people to hunt animals to radio telescopes that can see into deep space. This statue at Giza in Egypt has a human head on a lion's body. It is thought to have been made about 4,500 years ago. However, in all of the years of human history, smallpox is the only virus to be eradicated through vaccination. Fossil discoveries have helped scientists to piece together the story of human evolution. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, and their ancestors are called hominins. Sahelanthropus chidensis, the first hominin, was an ape-like animal that appeared in Africa about 7 million years ago. Later hominin species left Africa and spread out around the world. Homo sapiens evolved about 200,000 years ago. The earliest known fossils from Ethiopia are 195,000 years ago. When we look at the Homo family in more detail, we and our extinct relatives belong to the Homo genus. A second Latin word, such as sapiens, completes each species name. Homo habilis that have lived 2.4 to 1.4 million years ago is thought to have been the first hominin species to make stone tools. Homo georgicus that have lived 1.8 million years ago are known only from a single fossil site in Georgia. This may have been the first hominin to leave Africa. Homo ergaster that have lived 1.9 to 1.5 million years ago are as tall as modern humans and with a similar build, and it looked very different than its ape-like ancestors. Homo erectus that have lived 1.8 million to 200,000 years ago is known to have used stone hand axes. Homo antecessor that have lived 1.2 million to 500,000 years ago became the first hominin to reach Western Europe. Homo heidelbergensis that have lived 600,000 to 250,000 years ago with a big brain and a muscular body could hunt large animals and make complex tools. Homo floresiensis that have lived 95,000 to 17,000 years ago was nicknamed hobbit and was tiny, just over 1 meter tall. It lived until very recently. Homo neanderthalensis that have lived 200,000 to 30,000 years ago is a successful species that was skilled at hunting, made and used stone tools, and buried its dead. Australopithecus hominins evolved about 4.2 million years ago in East Africa. 6 species are known. One species called Afarensis may be the ancestor of humans. Fossils show that it was up to 1.5 meters tall and had a relatively small brain. Crucially, it could walk upright. In Laetoli, Tanzania, footprints of at least 2 Australopithecus afarensis individuals were discovered here, preserved in volcanic ash. Music, art, religion, and technology all began so long ago, we can't be certain of exactly when. There are clues to early culture, however, such as ritual burial sites, which archaeologists can date. The earliest tools, called the Autowan toolkit, were made by an early human species called handyman, or Homo habilis in Africa. Autowan-style tools in Europe and Asia are much younger, made by later types of humans, including Neanderthals. The Acheulean toolkit about 1.8 million years ago of our later ancestors, such as Homo erectus, included a new invention, the hand axe, with a finely chiseled edge. The Mousterian tools spanned the Middle Stone Age about 200,000 years ago and included lots of specialized shapes for different jobs. And the earliest stone tools discovered in America are from the 13,000-year-old Clovis people. The first known sewing needle dates back about 25,000 years. It was made of bone and used to sew together animal hides. Music, like art, is much older than writing, since bone flutes and other musical instruments have been made and played for more than 40,000 years. People wore jewelry more than 100,000 years ago in sites as distant as Israel and South Africa. The oldest known clay pots were made in China about 20,000 years ago. Our ancestors began burying their dead with significant objects such as beads or other decorations at least 100,000 years ago. The earliest known sculpture consists of figurines carved from stone and bone to look like humans and animals. Some date back up to 40,000 years. Humans have painted and carved rock surfaces since at least 40,000 years ago. Some paintings show people dancing and singing. In the ancient world, as civilizations grew, some had ambitions to become richer and more powerful by conquering or controlling their neighbors. The most successful conquerors created huge empires. This map shows the territories of each ancient empire at its peak. Some empires fell as drastically as they rose, whereas others, such as the Roman Empire, declined gradually over centuries. From 1550 to 1069 BCE, the Egyptian New Kingdom grew under Thutmose III, one of the first great generals in history. At its peak, Egypt ruled the southeast Mediterranean. From 1500 to 400 BCE, the first major culture in Central America, the Olmecs, lived in what is now Mexico. They were expert farmers and traded all over the region. They developed one of the first writing systems in the Americas. From 550 to 336 BCE, Cyrus the Great and his army conquered huge swaths of Central Asia and grabbed enormous wealth from the kingdoms they conquered. Cyrus's successor, Darius I, built cities, roads, and even a canal from the Nile River to the Red Sea. From 330 to 323 BCE, Alexander was a general from Macedon, a kingdom north of Greece. At its height, his empire covered most of the world known to Greeks. For centuries after his death, the Greek culture that he introduced continued to dominate the Eastern Mediterranean and Western Asia. From 500 to 900 CE, one of the most advanced cultures of the ancient world, the Maya, developed an accurate yearly calendar based on their sophisticated understanding of astronomy. From 27 BCE to 476 CE, one of the history's most influential civilizations, Rome, controlled much of Europe, Western Asia, and North Africa. Many roads, aqueducts, and canals built by the Romans are still in use today. From 206 to 220 CE, the 4 centuries of Han rule are often called the Golden Age of ancient China. It was an era of peace and prosperity in which China became a major world power. At its height, the Han Empire of China ruled 60 million people, more than 1/4 of the world's population at the time. From 321 to 185 BCE, Chandragupta Maurya was the first leader to conquer the entire Indian subcontinent. His son Ashoka became a Buddhist and ruled the empire peacefully for 42 years. Out of all the empires in history, it is of note that Alexander the Great won every battle he fought. Ancient Greek travelers and authors such as Herodotus, Antipater, and Philo of Byzantium praised the architectural marvels of the age in their writings. The buildings and statues they described became known as the 7 wonders of the world. Today, we recognize many other amazing structures that architects, masons, and sculptors of the past built with relatively simple tools. Out of the 7 wonders of the world, only the pyramids at Giza still stand. Earthquakes destroyed the Hanging Gardens, the Colossus, and the Pharaohs. Flooding and fire ruined the Mausoleum and the statue of Zeus. The temple of Artemis was wrecked by the gods. Here it is of note that the Great Pyramid of Giza could weigh as much as 716 million tons. Other wonders that didn't make the 7 wonders list, mainly because they were unknown to the Greeks, because some of them were built during later periods, include the Colosseum in Rome, which could hold more than 50,000 spectators. The arena could be flooded to stage mock sea battles. Hagia Sophia, which is an enormous, richly decorated church, later a mosque. Petra, a city hewn out of rock, capital of the Nabateans. Temples of Abu Simbel, 2 temples built to honor the pharaoh Ramesses II. Pont du Gard, Roman aqueduct that carried water to Nimes. Acropolis, Greek citadel that includes the Parthenon Temple. The Great Pyramid, the world's largest pyramid, now with a church on top. The Pyramid of the Sun, with steep steps up the side leading to a temple on the top. The Stonehenge, which is a prehistoric monument with a circle of enormous stones. The Bamiyan Buddhas, which are huge statues chiseled into a cliff destroyed in 2001. The Great Wall of China once ran for 3,889 miles along China's northern border. The Terracotta Army of 8,000 life-size warriors entombed with the first emperor of China. The Aksum Stelae, which is a group of memorial obelisks carved from huge blocks of stone. Mummies, the preserved bodies of the dead, have been found the world over. Many were made deliberately, while others formed naturally. More recently, some countries have mummified their leaders. The Palermo catacombs contain about 8,000 mummies. Sometimes, bodies are turned into mummies accidentally by naturally dry air and soil, the cold of mountains and polar regions, or the acidic waters of the bogs. From 1865 to 1958, people in Guanajuato, Mexico, unable to pay a grave tax, had to dig up long-dead relatives. Some had been mummified by the dry climate. Mummies have also been found in the peat bogs of northern Europe, with the oldest dating from about 10,000 years ago. In 1984, a man's body was found in a bog at Lindelmoss, Cheshire, England. He was killed between 2 BCE and 119 CE, perhaps as a religious sacrifice. Sir John Franklin's 1845 expedition to the Arctic went missing. In 1984, 3 of his crew were found mummified on Beechey Island, Canada. 8 mummified Inuit people who died in about 1475 were found on a cliff at Nuuk, Greenland in 1972. their bodies had freeze-dried. Many cultures had preserved the bodies of their dead. Usually, they removed the internal organs and drained the body fluids before embalming the body. In the 1880s, 56 mummies, including pharaohs, were found in Egypt's Valley of the Kings. In 2019, another 30 mummies were discovered in this area by Egyptian archaeologists. When Egyptian embalmers prepared a pharaoh's body for mummification, they pulled the brain out through the nose. Between 1200 and 1500, the Baloy people of the Philippines mummified their leaders by drying them over a fire, then putting them in caves. In 1599, Christian monks in Palermo, Sicily began mummifying their dead and stored them in catacombs. Later, rich people paid the monks to mummify their bodies. From 1680 to 1830, some Buddhist monks in Japan mummified themselves. They starved, drank special tea to make their body toxic to maggots, and then were sealed alive in a stone tomb. The Chinchorro, who lived in what is now Chile and Peru, were the first people known to make mummies. Their oldest mummies date from as early as 5000 BCE. Some famous mummies include Ozzy the Iceman. About 5,300 years ago, a traveler died when caught in a snowstorm in the Alps. His body became buried in the snow and then froze. In 1991, the corpse was discovered on top of a glacier. The mummy of Tutankhamun was found in a tomb in the Valley of the Kings in 1922. It wore a gold mask and lay inside a nest of 3 gold cases. The tomb, which had been sealed for 3,200 years, contained statues, furniture, and jewelry. In 1995, an Inca girl aged 11 to 15 was found on Mount Ampato, Peru. The discoverers named her Juanita, or the Ice Maiden. She was sacrificed to the gods about 530 years ago. The cold had preserved her skin, organs, blood, and stomach contents. Medieval means the Middle Ages, which lasted from the 5th century to the end of the 15th century. The period ended when the world became connected by explorers such as Columbus, heralding the start of modern times. Medieval times saw amazing architectural feats worldwide. The Maya and Aztecs built spectacular pyramid temples. Human sacrifice took place on the Templo Mayor in the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, now Mexico City. In South America, by the late 1400s, the Incas had a vast empire. The city of Machu Picchu occupied a remote hilltop at the edge of the empire. St. Peter's Basilica, built at the start of the Renaissance, is one of the world's largest and most ornate churches. Its enormous dome is at 138 meters high. And did you know? The Leaning Tower of Pisa tilts by 3.99 degrees? And in Asia, the vast Buddhist temple by Borobudur, Java, has 6 stepped rectangular stories, 3 circular terraces, and is decorated with 2,672 carved panels and 504 statues. And in Africa, at Lalibela, 11 churches complete with windows, doors, and roofs were cut into rocky hills. Each is cut from a single block of stone and linked by trenches. Also in Africa, Jenny's Great Mosque, the world's largest mud brick building, is built on a platform to prevent damage from river floods. At times between 500 and 1500 CE, one power or another controlled vast parts of Europe and Asia, and spread Islam and Christianity across the world as they knew it. Little known to them, African rulers joined up large regions for the first time, while empires in the Americas grew in isolation from the rest of the world. From 1428 to 1521, from the capital built on artificial islands on a lake, the Aztecs, who called themselves Mexica, conquered most of modern-day Mexico. The Aztecs sacrificed tens of thousands of their own people and enemy prisoners each year to appease the gods. The Chimu culture that existed from 850 AD to 1470 are skilled in pottery, textiles, and metalwork. Their territories covered coastal regions by the Andes Mountains. They are conquered by the rival Inca Empire in 1470. The Huari Empire that existed from 540 to 1100 was the first of the New World powers to use large cities to run the empire and to live in rather than just for religious ceremonies. The Inca Empire that existed from 1438 to 1536 is the largest empire of pre-Spanish Americas. Incas worshipped Inti, the sun god, and were skilled at building cities high up in the Andes Mountains. The Umayyad Caliphate that existed from 661 to 1031 is the second of four great Muslim dynasties of the Arab Caliphate, meaning kingdom. The Tiwanaku Empire that existed from 400 to 950 began as a small town on the shores of Lake Titicaca on the border of Peru and Bolivia, before rapidly expanding into the surrounding areas. The Songhai Empire that existed from 1375 to 1591 rose up in the wake of the declining Mali Empire. The city of Timbuktu became a center of Islamic learning. The Kanem Empire that existed from 700 to 1387 is one of the most powerful African empires. The main religion became Islam during the Second Dynasty under the rule of the Safawa. The Ottoman Empire that existed from 1299 to 1922, sometimes called the Turkish Empire, is a long-lasting Islamic state with the wealthy city of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, as its capital. The Holy Roman Empire that existed from 962 to 1806 is one of the longest-lasting empires in history. This was a Christian state with no capital. In 1356, Frankfurt became the home of the imperial elections. The Byzantine Empire that existed from 330 to 1453 evolved from the Eastern Roman Empire, a Christian, Greek-speaking empire that preserved both Roman and Greek cultures. The Moghal Empire that existed from 1526 to 1857 brought centralized government, education, and religious tolerance to South Asia. The Khmer Empire that existed from 802 to the 1400s is a Hindu and Buddhist empire influenced by Indian culture. Architecture of the empire reached its height with the construction of the temple at the capital, Angkor. The Mongol Empire was the largest continuous land empire in history, and it was founded by Genghis Khan in 1206, and it was made possible by numerous violent conquests. At its peak, the Mongol Empire ruled over 100 million people. From castles and forts to walled cities, rulers and nations throughout history have tried to build impregnable structures to keep their enemies at bay and strengthened their grip on power. Most castles in Europe were fortified residences of nobles or monarchs. Others were purely defensive. The castle in Burghausen, Germany is Europe's longest castle complex, consisting of a main castle and inner courtyard protected by 5 outer courtyards. The Cap des Chevaliers in Syria is a 12th century crusader castle that has an outer wall with 13 towers separated from the inner wall and kept by a moat. Castles in Asia reflect local building styles and look different than those in Europe, but they serve the same purpose. The Himeji in Japan was built as a fort in 1333, and it was then rebuilt several times between the 14th and the 17th centuries. It has 83 buildings protected by 26-meter-high walls and 3 moats, and is Japan's largest castle. The Marangarh Fort in India is 122 meters above the city of Jaipur, and it hides several palaces within its walls. Built by the ruler Raujoda in 1459, it is entered through a series of 7 gates. The Windsor Castle in England has been a royal residence for 900 years. Other than castles, there are fortified cities, which are cities surrounded by defensive walls, often incorporating a castle or royal residence. The former imperial palace in Beijing has 980 buildings ringed by a wall and a 52-meter wide moat. And there was also the Great Zimbabwe, which was once the capital of the Kingdom of Zimbabwe. The stone walls of this royal city were built without using mortar. Over time, forts became vital military centers. Their low, thick, angled walls were able to deflect cannonballs. The Fort Independence in the U.S. is a star-shaped fort completed in 1851 and defended the harbor of Boston. Guns were mounted on its 5-pointed bastions. The Castle of Good Hope in South Africa is a star fort as well, built by the Dutch East India Company in 1666 to 1679 to protect Dutch settlers on the Cape of Good Hope. The Ottoman Turks besieged the fortified town of Candia, Crete, for over 21 years before it surrendered in 1669. At one time, armies met in formation on a single field of battle and fought for 1 to several days. By the 20th century, long-range weapons had changed warfare. Battlefields in places became theaters of war the size of countries. Changes in weapon technology have affected how battles are fought. As weapons get deadlier, the two sides in a battle grew farther and farther apart. Until today, they sometimes don't meet or glimpse each other at all. The Battle of Crécy in 1346 is a key battle in the 100 Years' War between England and France. New long-range bows made close hand-to-hand combat and the chivalry that went with it a thing of the past. In 1453, after a 4-month siege, Byzantine Empire fell to the invading Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Turks took Constantinople using cannons for the first time in a major battle. After the bloody Battle of Kalinga, India in 261 BCE, Ashoka is said to have rejected warfare and turned to Buddhism. During the Battle of the Somme in 1916, the British and French attacked the German army during World War I in what was the world's first use of tanks in battle. It was also one of the bloodiest military operations ever. And then there was the Battle of Britain in 1940 between Britain and Germany during World War II. This was the first major campaign fought entirely in the air. And during the Battle of the Coral Sea in 1942, for the first time, ships in the battle never once sighted or directly fired on one another. And not strictly a battle, a siege is a military blockade of a city or fortress. The aim is to conquer the city by waiting for those inside to surrender. Sometimes the side-laying siege attacks to speed things up. During the siege of Carthage in 149 to 146 BCE, which was one of the longest sieges in history, the Romans surrounded Carthage in modern-day Tunisia and waited 3 years for its surrender, then enslaved the Carthaginian population. And during the capture of Jerusalem in 1099, during the Crusader Wars between Christians and Muslims, the Muslim defenders of Jerusalem lost control when the Christians built 2 ginormous siege engines, towers on wheels, and scaled the walls. The end of the 19th century saw fierce competition between world powers for control of overseas territories, with more countries now in reach than ever before. Expansions focused on Africa and Asia. The Atlantic slave trade, in which Africans were forcibly sold to people in the Americas, ended in the mid-19th century. European powers colonized Africa for economic, political, and religious reasons, scrambling to claim territory before their rivals. In 1871, Germany and Italy are both unified. No more territory available for expansion of empires in Europe. From 1884 to 85, the Berlin Conference happened, where European powers decide rules on carving up Africa. In 1900, only a handful of regions are still independent states. Britain rules 30% of Africa's population, and Europeans as a whole controlled 90% of Africa. And at its height, in 1922, the British Empire controlled almost 1/4 of the world's population and land. In the 1830s, though, Britain feared Russia was planning on invading British-ruled India through controlling India's neighbor, Afghanistan. The great game was the rivalry for power in Asia between British and Russian empires. From 1839 to 1842, the First Anglo-Afghan War resulted in terrible defeat at Kabul for the British. And during the Second Anglo-Afghan War between 1878 to 1880, Russia is defeated and Britain withdraws but takes control of Afghanistan's foreign affairs. And in 1907, Russia and Britain signed a peace treaty in the face of the German threat of expansion in the Middle East. People all over the world have risen up against oppressive rulers. Revolutions can be sudden or lengthy, bloody or peaceful, but have one thing in common. They are all an attempt to change the way a country is ruled. Revolutionary leaders are driven by passionate ideals. They inspire people to rise up against governments. Such people are key in organizing effective group action against authorities. Che Guevara, 1928 to 67, an Argentinian-born idealist, helped Fidel Castro overthrow Cuban dictator Fulgencio Batista, now a global symbol of rebellion. Kwame Nkrumah, 1909 to 72, oversaw Ghana's independence from Britain. Ghana was the first in a wave of sub-Sahara African nations to break free of colonial rule. Simon Bolivar, 1783 to 1830, a Venezuelan politician and a general who led Venezuela Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia to independence. One of South America's most influential leaders, Vladimir Lenin, 1870 to 1924, after being exiled to Siberia, returned to Russia to support and then lead the 1917 revolution. Mao Zedong, 1893 to 1976, founder of the People's Republic of China, ruthless in bringing about modernization with the Great Leap Forward and enforced communism with the Cultural Revolution. Mahatma Gandhi, 1869 to 1948, devoted his life to bringing peace to India, has inspired nonviolence and civil rights movements worldwide. The USSR was a communist state that incorporated Russia and 14 other Soviet republics, some of the red areas on the map. The USSR also had great influence over several other European states that collectively were known as the Communist Bloc, some of the yellow map areas. In 1989, revolution spread through all these states, and in 1991, the USSR was dissolved. The Arab Spring revolutions and protests swept through the Arab world in 2011. As the map shows, in some countries, rulers were forced out, while in others, there were failed uprisings. The Arab Spring was the first uprising where protesters used social media to coordinate their actions. Not all the movements were successful, however. The uprising in Tunisia led to a number of improvements, but many of the other countries are still marked by unrest. The American Revolution of 1776 gave hope to poverty-stricken Europe and inspired the 1789 to 99 French Revolution. And during the Mexican Revolution in 1910, at least 1 million people died. The beds and shores of the world's seas, lakes, and rivers are littered with shipwrecks. Some are famous either for the huge loss of life they caused for the enormous value of their cargo. Humans can be responsible for shipwrecks in many different ways. War is one of the main causes. Missiles, mines, air attacks, and sabotage have all been used to destroy ships. Other factors can be bad design, shoddy construction, or poor maintenance and repairs. Navigation errors that cause a ship to run aground or hit other traffic, and overloading cargo so that the vessel tips over. Sailors battle constantly against the phenomenal forces of nature, and one of the most common causes of shipwrecks is bad weather. Storms and hurricanes batter ships and blow them off course, and fog, rain, or snow reduce visibility. Ice is another big risk. An iceberg can inflict a fatal damage to a ship if it collides with one, while ice that builds up on the body of a ship can also cause it to become unstable and capsize. One of the world's largest wrecks is Amoco Cadiz, which sank in 1978, spilling more than 220,000 tons of crude oil. Some notorious shipwrecks include the RMS Titanic on April 14, 1912. It struck an iceberg and sank 2 hours and 40 minutes later. The death toll was 1,517 people. The USS Arizona sunk in the opening minutes of the Japanese attack on the U.S. Navy at Pearl Harbor in 1942. The death toll was 1,177 people. RMS Lusitania, a British liner sunk by a World War I German submarine in 1915. The death toll was 1,200 people. The Industrial Revolution of the 18th and 19th centuries saw remarkable advances in technology and materials. This led to extraordinary design and engineering feats. the likes of which had never been seen before. The first transatlantic cable between Canada and Ireland that was constructed in 1858 was a cable that transported messages from one end to another. The first of its kind to be laid across the Atlantic, meaning messages could be received in a matter of minutes. The Transcontinental Railroad between California and Nebraska was constructed in 1869 that connected the East Coast railroads of the U.S. with the Pacific Coast for the first time. It was considered to be one of the greatest technological feats of the 19th century. The home insurance building in Chicago, Illinois, that was constructed in 1885 was the first ever steel-framed building and first tall building to be supported by a fireproof metal frame. Although not very tall, the technology used made it the first skyscraper. The Graf Zeppelin airship in Friedrichshafen in Germany in 1928 made the first non-stop transatlantic passenger flight and flew regular commercial flights from 1932 to 37 from Germany to Brazil. The first aircraft in history to fly more than 1 million miles, and no passengers or crews were ever injured. In Concorde, Toulouse, in France, in 1969, the first commercial passenger aircraft to fly faster than sound. Its average speed was 1,334 miles per hour, more than twice that of conventional aircraft. Only 20 were ever built, and the last Concorde flight was in 2003. And the Channel Tunnel between Folkestone, UK and Calais, France was constructed in 1994, and it was an international undersea train tunnel. French engineer Albert Madieu put forward a proposal for the Channel Tunnel in 1802, 192 years before it opened. And the Hoover Dam between Nevada and Arizona was constructed in 1936. It was the largest concrete structure ever built at that time, and more than 21,000 people built the Hoover Dam.